but you never steer me wrong. So lead on, good shepherd, lead on.
Welcome everyone to the For His Namesake podcast, where we talk about leadership skills for this generation that they can use not only in their church, school, and community, but most importantly, their entire Christian walk. And so today I want to continue our purpose series, and next week we'll close it off with a special guest. But today I want to go to the New Testament. So we've been talking about some Old Testament characters like Moses and Esther and David as well. But today I want to talk about Matthew, the first book of the New Testament, one of the disciples of Jesus. And I just want to talk about his life and what he did before he became a disciple, when he became a disciple, and probably just kind of just thinking in our own minds what maybe Matthew went through in his own life. And so if you go to Matthew chapter 9, it says in verse 9, it says, "As Jesus passed on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting in the tax booth, and he said to him, 'Follow me.' And he rose and followed him." So we see that Matthew, of course, we knew that he was a tax collector, and he was of his own people. He was a Jew, but he became a tax collector for the Romans. And this, of course, kind of ruined Matthew's social life, because tax collectors were hated by the Jews, because nobody liked tax collectors, because nobody likes to give their taxes. And so everybody hated Matthew. And I can imagine that his whole life, as soon as he made that decision, his family probably disowned him, that everything he once knew was in the past. And now he had this new life, this almost new identity, because he had kind of given away his old life because he became a tax collector. And just showing how he was kind of a outcast in society. He was a nobody to people, really, that he was seen as a threat because he was taking their taxes. And the question is, why would somebody take the taxes of their own people? They probably considered him as a traitor, someone that had no worth of being associated with them. Well, it says that Jesus saw Matthew sitting in the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." We hear this same phrase multiple times throughout the New Testament when Jesus calls the disciples to follow him. You see it in Matthew 4 when he calls the disciples Peter and the fishermen and says, "Will you follow me and become fishers of men?" Because we're not called to just stay and do nothing. We're called to go. We're called to follow Christ no matter what we do in our life, whether it's a simple occupation, like maybe you work in a doctor's office, maybe you're a fireman, maybe you work in the garbage disposal unit, whatever that is, or maybe you're in ministry, maybe you're a pastor, maybe you are looking to go into ministry, but you can do ministry in anything you do. You can still reach people in any way you can. And we see with Matthew that he was a tax collector, a rejected one, but Christ called him to follow him. And we notice that as soon as it says follow me, it says, and he rose and followed him. And there was no hesitation in this, that as soon as he heard the words follow me, that he got up, left what he was doing. He was making plenty of money, had a nice home, I'm sure, was protected by the Roman government, but he threw all that away and followed Christ. Somebody that he maybe had seen, he's heard of, but he really has no clue about who he is. But as soon as he says that, he follows him. And it's amazing how through all the disciples, they all hear that same words and they follow Christ. Even though they really don't know who he is, they've seen his miracles, they've heard what he's done, but they really don't know who he is. But despite that, they follow him. And you keep reading in the passage, and it says, "And as Jesus reclined at table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were reclining with Jesus and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, 'Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?' But when he heard it, he said, 'Those who are well have no need of a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. For I came not to call the righteous, but sinners.' So basically, after Matthew's called, Jesus sits down and has a meal with his disciples and sinners and tax collectors, people that are, the outcast of society, like I said, like Matthew was, people that were kind of hated and nobody cared about, and clearly the people that the Pharisees hated. And when the Pharisees saw this, they said, "Why is your master eating with these types of people? Why is your master eating with those people?" Because I've talked about before about those people should become our people. Jim McComas says it all the time, that the people that we reject in the church, the people that are outcast, the people that maybe talk a different way, they look a different way, they have a tattoo on their arm, maybe it's the way they dress, maybe it's what they have done or what they are doing. We try to classify that as those people. But we cannot consider ourselves the church. We cannot consider ourselves a disciple of Jesus Christ until we make those people our people. And until that happens, our mission is distorted. We see that Jesus did not come to save the righteous, but he came for the sinner. He asked them, people who have need of a physician or a doctor, they don't go to a doctor when they're well. They don't go to the doctor when they're not sick. They go to the doctor when they're sick. They go to the doctor when they need help. And that's what Jesus came for. He came to encourage those and help the sinner, to show the sinner his wicked ways and show them that the only person they needed was Jesus. And that's what Jesus came to do. That's why Jesus called Matthew, because he didn't come just to call the righteous people. As I said in the last episode, he will equip the called. He won't always call the equipped. Because we see with Matthew that maybe he wasn't that equipped. He was a tax collector. He was rejected. He was a sinner. But Jesus still called him and used him for his glory. He wrote a book in the New Testament. He was one of the disciples, reached many souls. But the Pharisees were so busy looking on the outside that they could never focus on what the true heart of the person was on the inside. They were so focused on who the people were than where their heart was at. And how often in our lives do we judge people on the outside, but we never have the time to look on the inside of who they truly are? We judge people by what they do, how they've been, but what we really should be doing is loving them on the inside, showing them that we care for them, that we love them, and that they are appreciated, and that we will accept them into our family at our churches, and that they're not outcasts to us, but they're rather one of us. And through all that, maybe we can just show them a glimpse of Jesus, show them that he is the only way, the only truth, and the only life. And that's why he came, to show people that he is the way, not the Pharisees, not all these sayings and different things, but rather he is the way. And showing that through this meeting with it, calling Matthew the tax collector, and then having a meal with tax collectors and sinners, showing that that is why he came. To help those who are poor, to heal the sick, heal the people that couldn't walk or see, to help those in need. If you flip back a few chapters, it says in chapter 5, that it says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you, and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven." And I feel like that last verse 11 and verse 12, really hit on Matthew, that blessed are you, Matthew. who, when others revile you, when others criticize you, they persecute you for what you once did. And I feel like there was even tensions among the disciples, like, why would you call a tax collector Jesus? But even though they say all these things about you, Matthew, all these evil things against you falsely, rejoice because your reward will be great in heaven. And how many times in our life where people have said the same things to us, people revile us, they talk bad about us, they want to persecute us, they want to shut us down, they want us to give up, they want us to stop doing what we're doing because they know it's good. And how many times in our lives have people done that, spread your name falsely to others, done bad things to you to make you look like you're not worth it, make you look like you don't deserve it. But Christ says your reward will be great in heaven. And I feel like Matthew heard that when he was a disciple, and that his reward would be great in heaven, and that us as well, our reward will be great in heaven if we stay faithful, if we stay the course and follow Christ and rather not ourselves. Because God can do a work in us, whether we realize it or not. In the times where we feel like we're not worthy, like Matthew probably did, times where we're looked down upon, God can do a work in us. I think about for his name's sake, that almost 2 years ago we started this whole thing. And I would have never expected that one day I'd be doing a podcast, or one day we'd be doing a conference here in October, or I'd write a book. But God can work in all of us. And maybe God can use us, maybe to impact a generation, but maybe just to impact one lost soul. Because at the end of the day, that one lost soul is all that matters. If I go this entire life and I only lead one person to Christ, or impact one person's life, I know that's what God wanted. And at the end of the day, that's what's worth it. Because that's what matters at the end of the day, is not the numbers, is not the popularity or prosperity, but rather how you can reach people. And maybe that's only one person. But if that one person comes to know Christ, I say that your work is great. Well, let's think about that, how maybe we might be persecuted, but we can still do a work of God and people, and he can use us. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. I'm so excited. I told you about the book last week. This is going to be coming up, July 21st, revealing that at the National and for sale. We'll have a Square site. I'll end up putting that in the description and on the video. But go check out our Instagram to learn more. Keep updated. It's at for his namesake P23. And go check that out. We'll love for y'all to follow that and keep up with us. Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope to see y'all next week to finish out our Purpose series. So thank you for all you do. Thank you for praying for me. And I'll see y'all all later.
Good shepherd, I'll follow all my days. There ain't nothing sweeter than to watch you make a way.